Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM. Connecting Highline and our region. Share your story. Our Highline Voices, history, cultural heritage, art, performances, contemporary, pop culture. We are very motivated to provide a vibrant community museum and authentic social gathering place. It truly takes a village to raise a museum. Despite the challenges, our daily inspiration is our eagerness to build a stronger and more connected community. This museum is from the community to the community. Our passion is for our visitors to have access to a broad spectrum of information sources and cultural perspectives. Our Highline Voices.
Hi, everyone. This is Nancy. I'm from the Highline Heritage Museum, and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we do have a very special guest tonight. Every day I say the same thing. Everyone is special to me. But Eric has been in the museum field for a very long time, and we really want to make sure that we capture who he is as a person. And so we're excited to have him with us. And our time is limited today, so we're going to try to speed up and making sure that we cover in all the different areas. Eric, welcome. I want to say thank you so much for allowing us to interview you. And one of the reasons why we are doing this interview is because we do believe in connecting not just the people in Highline, but also connecting outside of the Highline area. And then to see how we interact with each other. We do have a Nordic community in the South End, and it's just another way that they can connect from outside the Highline to you. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, give a basic introduction, and then we go into the questions. Are you ready?
Sure. Thanks, Nancy. My name, as you said, Eric Nelson, and I'm currently the executive director at the National Nordic Museum here in Ballard, in the north end of Seattle. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you for coming with us tonight. You are a director. And I know that you have been a director way before coming to the Nordic Museum. Can you let us know a little bit more about who you are as a director and your history with it?
Sure. I'm happy to do that. It goes back a ways. So I started my career in museums as a curator of a small regional museum back in Northern California in quite a while ago. In 1988, I was the curator of exhibitions and collections at the Sonoma County Museum in Santa Rosa. And I just completed a master's degree in history and was very excited about being able to work in a museum. I had been teaching school a little while and didn't really enjoy that as much as I hoped I would, and went back to graduate school and was looking for a position. And at this museum focusing on history and art of the region, I was offered an opportunity to serve as the curator, which was great. I did that for about 5 years, a little over, and became both director and curator for a while, and then interim director, and then became the director. So that was kind of my first museum, and not at all unlike the Highline Heritage Museum. We had a staff of about 3 and did a ton of exhibitions and programs and great collections, and was able to work in that community for about 5 years as the director, and successful in doubling the budget and expanding staff and expanding the reach of the museum in a way that allowed us to serve broader audiences, and had some wonderful experiences. It was an agrarian community, lots of grapes and orchards and cattle and others, and a big Latino population in that part of California. And I was given an opportunity to join the board of a bilingual radio station. And the director of the radio station later became a kind of manager of the Univision station for the North Bay, and worked with her on a number of projects that really allowed the museum and me to engage with Latino community. We, I think, ended up traveling to Mexico a half a dozen times, working with the states of Guanajuato and Michoacan and a couple of others, where we were doing exhibition exchanges and cultural exchanges, and it was wonderful, good fun. After serving there for a total of 10 years, 5 as curator and 5 as director, I was given an opportunity to move over one county to Napa County and took over the reins of the directorship there. And it was kind of interesting because a lot of my upbringing was in Napa, and I'm super familiar with the region and the community, and I was the first director of a new museum building there. And again, a smallish team, but very dedicated and passionate, and working hard with a variety of community groups to make sure that museum was sustainable and thriving. And again, it was good fun being able to build and expand the collections and the programs, as well as the budget of that place. And again, the opportunities there included more travel, again, mostly within the state, but also some big projects also in Mexico. The mayor of Yachtville, which is a small town just north of Napa, was a Latino woman who was very enthusiastic about cultural exchange. And I was able to chair a big cultural exchange in Mexico, and ended up spending about 3 or 4 weeks down there, and it culminated in a wonderful exhibition of contemporary art from Mexico that we were able to show in the museum. Engaged a number of different community groups in that part of California that were really focused on the Latino community, and it was great fun. And again, a wonderful opportunity to be able to make sure the museum, which sometimes notoriously limiting the audiences that they serve, to really broaden the audience and make sure that there were programs that were relevant to broader communities, and introduced Dia de los Muertos celebrations and a number of other programs that really kind of celebrated not just the arts and culture of the community that we were functioning in, but also the cultural heritage of many of the people that were living in that region, which was a great opportunity to be able to engage audience.
Oh, this is interesting. No, this is great. As you know, I'm from Mexico City, and we've known each other, I don't know how many years, probably 12 years. I don't know for how long we've been known each other, but one of the things that surprises me when I met you is that you actually had that much, relationships and experiences with Mexican culture. And so that was interesting. When I think about the Nordic culture, it's always a different view. And so do you allow me to actually see that it's not about who you're serving, is how you're serving. And so to me, is that you've been serving, doing international projects, that you've been serving about how to engage different cultures into the space. And the Nordic is not just been your only experience, that you have many more experiences doing that work. Different demographics, different part of the state or different part of the planet, but still you've been able to have those experiences, have those international exchanges. And then how do you create a space for dialogue on different backgrounds? And so that's one of the first things that got my attention, and I really admire of the work that you do. And then while when we met, we were at For Culture as a Heritage Advisory Committee for a few years, but then that's at the same time we were building our museums. You were building yours and I was building mine. And another area that I really appreciate your experiences is that you know what it feels to work in a small institution. You know how it feels to be, with limited budget, and then just how do you create things out of just really limited resources. You've been a curator, so there's another element of that too. I don't know, you've known Brad. He is right now the president of the Washington Museum Association. And so my interview with him, we were just like, you've been the curator, you are the director, and there is this kind of cool shared experiences that we have with it, because we have a passion to serve in a community. You have the passion to maybe not passion. I mean, everyone is different, but for me, it's a passion to serve the community. And the idea of being fascinated by objects and culture and people and ideas and backgrounds. And to me, it's like a big buffet that you offer a big, I'm always hungry, so I'm always thinking of food in my analogies. But when you think about serving a reception, and then you're trying to make sure that you're accommodating for as many people as you can. And so your buffet has been great. You have done a Mexican buffet, you have done a Nordic buffet, and I can see that also just embracing American culture within the diversity lens. So for all of you who didn't know that Eric has actually Mexican experiences, there you go. That's a nice surprise. And he does have that. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask that question, is knowing that his experiences are not just one demographic, that he has covered a lot of ground already. And it's one of the things that I also would like to talk about is your values, but I will address that a little later. We're going to go back to the National Nordic Museum here in the state. Why? Why here? Why not another part of the country? Why in Washington, Seattle?
Washington State's got a fascinating history, and I've always been kind of very intrigued by the history of the U.S., especially the West Coast. And its settlement here in the state was a little bit later than in a lot of other parts of the country for a number of reasons. But the settlement pattern was, again, fairly well established by the 1880s, but the immigration patterns of Scandinavians and Nordics has been very well studied. And again, starting in about the late 1860s, it started to really ramp up and kind of hit a pinnacle in the 80s and 90s, 1880s and 90s, and then started to taper off by the 20s. But the first place a lot of the immigrants came to from Scandinavia was the Midwest, and the upper Midwest particularly. So in places like Minnesota and Iowa and the Dakotas. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that there was Homestead Act, and that there was a lot of land being taken away from tribal groups and given to Europeans for settlement. And a lot of the Europeans from Northern Europe and Germany were being recruited to come and take that land and be part of that expansion. Good and bad, obviously. But what happened was a lot of the Scandinavians that ended up in the upper Midwest, after about 20 years, came to understand that there was opportunity in the Pacific Northwest that was very familiar to them, logging and fishing and mining, and the industries that were common in Scandinavia were common here, much more so than in the Midwest. So there was a secondary migration from the Midwest to the Pacific Northwest that really happened in the 1880s and 90s and continued on actually to this day. And not so much a secondary migration, but the migration of Scandinavians to the Pacific Northwest didn't end in the 20s, and it continued on just before the Second World War, with a lot of Norwegians coming to work in the fishing industry. After the Second World War, a lot of mechanics from Saab came to work at Boeing. After that, a lot of folks from the tech industry came to work at Microsoft and places like that. So there's been a continuing influx of Nordics into the Pacific Northwest, which is interesting to me. And also, when you look at the census data too, about 12% of the population of Washington State identifies as being Nordic, which is a huge chunk of the population. And when we were talking earlier about cultural identity and working with Mexico, I think one of the things that was attractive to me about this museum is it's really about cultural identity, and the fact that a lot of people from the Nordic region have a cultural identity that's different than kind of the mainstream, or at least there are enough differences that people really want to explore and study that. So not at all unlike kind of my enthusiasm and interest in multiculturalism and being able to go to Mexico and work in that milieu with a culture that was different than kind of mainstream. Always been fascinated in my own cultural identity, which is also Scandinavian, from Sweden. And this position has allowed me to kind of dig into that in a way that's been very, very interesting. And it's been great to be a part of the National Nordic Museum. But again, bringing a history of working with in a multicultural sense to this museum was something that was very attractive to me. I think it was also very attractive to the board that was the governing body of the museum that was making this decision of who to hire. So they wanted somebody that had some cultural sensitivity around this Nordic identity, and the fact that I'd been raised in a household of, second generation immigrants from that region was important. The fact that I'd spent a lot of time in Scandinavia was also important, and that I had an awareness of what that culture was, but also that I was comfortable and somewhat facile in dealing with multicultural aspects of community. And that's been a great advantage and a great benefit to working here. I found it continually enthusiastic. Most people see the Scandinavians and the Nordics as just part of the overall general population. But again, I think like anything, the more you study it, the more subtle differences you see. And even within the Nordic community, there are variances and differences. And as you know, in Mexico, it's a huge country, and the people in the South have very different orientations than the people in the North, and people in the West have very different orientations than the people in the East. And Scandinavia and the Nordic region is very similar to that. The Finns and the Danes are about as different as can be, and being able to kind of get to know these communities, especially the communities that have settled here in the Pacific Northwest, has been wonderful. But I also love the fact that because a lot of the relationships continued and didn't just end in the 1920s or the 19-teens or the 1880s, there's been a robust exchange between Scandinavia, contemporary Scandinavian culture in the Pacific Northwest. And that's another reason I think the Nordic Museum exists here, is because of that ongoing migration and immigration from the Nordic region. And again, it's allowed me to travel regularly between here and Scandinavia and continue to bring exhibitions and programs to the Pacific Northwest from some of the more significant national institutions over in the Nordic region. So again, it's been good fun, but the reason that the museum is here is because of that large population of Scandinavians that have been coming here since the 1800s and continue to come. And of course, places like Poulsbo and Ballard are very well known for their Scandinavian roots. And again, people hold on to those that identity in really meaningful ways. And the museum is just one opportunity for people in those communities to express that identity, which is important, I think, to all of us. And again, it's wonderful to live in a multicultural world and be able to celebrate and explore other people's heritage and culture. And again, I know I was just talking to you a little bit about the upcoming weekend. We have our Yule Fest, which is our Christmas festival, coming up, and we're expecting to have somewhere between 14 and 15,000 people at the museum just coming to celebrate Christmas in a traditionally Scandinavian way. So again, there's still a huge population of folks that share this culture or want to explore this culture, which is another big reason why the museum exists here in the Pacific Northwest, and here in Seattle, and here in Ballard particularly. And again, for those who may not be familiar with Ballard, which is kind of the northwest corner of Seattle, it was settled by a lot of Nordics, a lot of Scandinavians came to work in the maritime industrial industries here, shipyards and other support industries, but also in the shingle mills. So there were a lot of Swedes and Finns that were working in the forest industries that found positions and jobs in the shingle mills, and there were lots of Icelanders and Norwegians that were in the fishing industry and maritime industrial industry have found positions here, and the settlement pattern really, like all sorts of different neighborhoods here in Seattle. Ballard had a very, very heavy Scandinavian population. In fact, still is one of the main reasons why the museum is located where we are.
Well, first of all, congratulations. I know it took many years on the construction many years in planning, and then many years to actually make it reality. In our case, it took us 25 years. So, and that yours probably was a different time frame, but congratulations that finally you made it happen, and your team and everyone around you. When it comes to understanding the population of where we are located, to me is fascinated as well as an immigrant at all levels. I'm very fascinated by not just the current migration, but in general, this domino effect that takes place globally. I mean, all these exchanges that occurs is not just situated in one region. We are going through that every day now with transportation, communication. All this technology is allowing us to do in a way that we have not done it 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And so now it is interesting who we are as a person individually. We, one way or another, kind of release a little bit of that into the work that we do. Like for me, I'm fascinated by DNA research. I'm fascinated by genealogy. I'm fascinated by what makes me me and what makes you you, and then just that journey of it. I'm only third generation Mexican. My brothers, each one of them, have been married to one Asian-American, African-American, and so on. And so, are we Mexican? I don't think my family is Mexican any longer. And so, how do we pass those messages down to the little ones? And so, when it comes to have a create a space for little ones to say, you know what, I belong to this place, even though I'm not maybe all 100% Norwegian or Nordic. I'm married to a person, or I got neighbors and friends, or I got relatives, and it just, one way or another, we are interconnected. And so once again, congratulations that you were able to establish a national museum in Washington State. I think I don't know if that's accurate. Is that the only national museum in the state?
Yeah, it's the only national museum in the state. I think there's 2 or 3 on the West Coast. So it was really nice. And it was wonderful that Senator Cantwell and Senator Murkowski actually pushed that through Congress. And it was really a very high honor. And I think it's because of the national significance of kind of the audience we serve and the programs that we're doing. So again, and I think our journey here at the Nordic only a little bit shorter than yours, because I think the first feasibility studies were done about 20 years before we opened. So it's not a short project. I was going to say, I think for me it was 10 years working at it. But again, there was a good 10 years before that, just kind of laying the groundwork and starting to talk about where and how, and a few small failed attempts here and there. And I know your story is very, very similar to that. So it takes, it takes tenacity and a lot of community support to build anything. And it's great to find ourselves in positions like we are. But I mean, and Lord knows, the responsibilities are big, but none of it's possible without a huge community of supporters and, thousands of people who have been supportive in a variety of different ways, politically, financially, just volunteers, and the rest are really what allows organizations like ours to grow and survive and thrive. But, it's really interesting to me, too, what you say about your own kind of cultural identity being a little bit blended, because I think all of us, one of the nice things about museums that focus on kind of a specific cultural identity are wonderful, because so many of us have so many different aspects of our cultural identity. So, I think I may have shared with you that my mother's mother is from the Alsace-Lorraine, so I always get a little bit fascinated whenever I can have some connection to that part of Europe, which may not, everybody knows me as Eric Nelson, the Scandinavian Nordic. So, but there are different bits of it, and then if we identify with being Washingtonian or Pacific Northwesterners or East Coasters or so there's some, being kind of in a multicultural world. I think we all also have some identity, multicultural identities as well, which is really fascinating because in working with a lot of Scandinavians and Nordics in the Nordic region, it's slightly different. There's not a little less complexity around cultural identity because people were born and raised, and for many generations, they've just been connected with that one place and that one spot. Here in the States, it seems like we are from different places and our heritage is mixed, and it really allows us, I think, more opportunities to explore a variety of cultural identities and realities, which is really good fun. And it's one of the main reasons why organizations like ours exist.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this to me is fascinating to be able to learn. I mean, it's humbling how much so many people has to offer. One person can offer from music and food and traditions and ideas and perspectives and wisdom. And so that concept of being influenced with each other is great. And I do believe that even though I was born and raised in Mexico City, I'm already influenced by this multicultural approach too in the United States. And I'm passionate about it, even though I'm not from the area. I'm not from Highline. I'm not even American in that way. I'm here and my position is to serve and find ways to actually coexist and co-share that those identities, who we are as human beings, and being able to just really embrace that, which is one of the values I wanted to tap into with you in a moment. Also, you have shared in the past that you actually live in Africa, and so you also have that cultural element in the early, even though you don't take ownership on that heritage, it is about the influence that you get around you. And so the same thing happens with all of us. Like if you go to the school district down here, is extremely really diverse demographic. So the little ones in this school district are growing up with this influence, even though they are not, let's just say from Africa, from Asia, or South American. It still is the idea of how do we influence each other. And so once again, congratulations on that. And I love how the work that we do, even though it's different in many different ways, we do have a lot of similarities. I do believe that your restaurant is more of a bigger restaurant than ours. Ours is the same as a restaurant, but it's still kind of small. We need to serve, we need to prepare the meals, we need to manage that. See, I'm always hungry. We're gonna go now to your actual values. I think that we've been tapping already into that as to who you are as a human being and how you express through your work, your cultural identity, how you express through, it might sound weird, but even compassion in having that personality that allows you to talk to people. I know that the museum has gotten a lot of awards and recognitions throughout the years. Not that many years. I mean, your museum is pretty young still as a national museum. But the recognitions that you have received either as an institution, as a director, I think it's just a reflection on the work that you have been taking on establishing those really relationships and maintaining them. It is not easy. Not everyone can do it. I mean, yes, you have the support, and the same as I do with this museum, I had the support of my board. I had the support of my memberships and the sponsors and patrons and community members and a lot of people around me. But then it's not easy to talk to a lot of people all at once. I mean, it's not easy that when it's a conflict, somehow you have to keep it cool and you have to just breathe in and then just. I love my tequila, so it's like having a tequila shot first, even if it's mentally, virtually, like, okay, let me have that tequila. Let me breathe in and then just go with it. I mean, it really takes a lot. And I do say that out of my own experience, maybe you can speak a little bit of that, but it's not just the funding, it's not just the moral support or the financial support, but it's also the capacity of us, how we take care of ourselves in order for us to continue to go through conflicts and issues. And that, my friend, I do admire you a lot. I admire you, the capacity to deal with international relationships, with national relationships, with local relationships, and then even within in your local communities. And so you had got a lot of recognitions. And I do hope that people see that it's not just building the museum, it's not just getting the building in, but it's also cultivating those values and why, having what is your heart? What is your heart in the institution, and why would people care? And so, thank you for sharing your heart on a beautiful project. Thank you for not being like in my case, I'm afraid that my Latina temper one of these days will flourish and it will really destroy everything. I mean, I really think like, oh, I got my punching bag in my office. That helps a lot. But my Latina temper, when I get mad, I do get mad. And so congratulations for keeping it cool, for no messing up international relationships, and for being able to truly create a beautiful space. But that is me talking a little bit about values. Now, as the question is to you, what are values to you, and how are you showing them through your work?
Oh, Nancy, that's really nice. And again, I think, there's very, very little difference between your job and my job. I mean, we do the same thing, no matter the size of the organization and the scope and the reach. I mean, I've been really lucky because some of this museum reach has been international, which is something I really appreciate and enjoy. But it's really the same work, and I think we all have punching bags. I mean, maybe not like yours. It really is a punching bag, but I think we all have to have those outlets because it is a stressful situation that we find ourselves in providing these kinds of opportunities for the community. I've always been really enthusiastic about museum work because it provides a platform for people to discuss and explore really critical issues. And I think that's been one of my driving desires as a museum director, is to make sure that there's a platform where people can have free access to ideas and opportunities to explore these critical issues that really impact us. And, I mean, everything from critical issues around global climate change and social justice to just sheer beauty and enjoyment of culture and cultural opportunities. But without organizations like yours or mine, it becomes almost impossible for people to really dig down and explore the inner meanings of things. Again, we're all fed a lot of information from a lot of different sources. And I think my goal as a museum director is to make sure that lots and lots and lots of voices are available for people to hear, and that there's a platform for that information to be shared, and people have an opportunity to learn and enjoy and really understand what some of those kind of aspirational opportunities might be to live a better life and to make the world a better place, and really to be able to find contentment and happiness.
No, I like that a lot. Yes, cheers to, I got my water, but cheers to outlets. Cheers to just do the work and have fun doing it too. I think that learning about each other and expressing that through your work, I think is also really cool to have that experience. You are retiring right now. And so you're in a transition between reflecting on your past work as a director and then currently as you're ready to move on. But before we go into that area, I also want to acknowledge that you've been hosting the Mexican Independence Day with the Mexican Consulate several years, and not that many people in the SAP knows that, or even in the museum field knows that. And so you guys, if you know that, yes, they are being hosting the Mexican independence in their site. And I know that through, not just because I'm Mexican, but also through the exhibits and through the programming, they really embracing those values of welcoming other people. And it's not just, I do hope that you represent a face, and maybe that people can connect with you in a way that, and to everyone in your staff, that you guys are a welcoming place, that you are not, the negative stereotypes of a Nordic culture when it comes to of how do you engage with minority groups and how you do engage with other diverse groups. And so that's one of the lessons I learned with you, is that no, it is, regardless of the color of your skin, is that they creating the space to just share with each other and get to know each other. Now, you are heading into your retirement. And so I think that, when I've been reading the articles and being just the narratives, it's been, you're retiring from the National Nordic Museum. But I don't think it's been the narrative. It's saying, no, you are retiring as a director, as a whole. It's not just from the Nordic Museum. You are, when you reflect on 20 years prior to you becoming that director. So you got, I think, 15, 16 years in one, and then 20 years in the other one. And so you're almost right there in the middle. And so my question to you is any reflections about, as a whole, you are not retiring as the Nordic Museum. You're retiring as a director completely, as a curator in a museum. I do hope that you, and I do, and I'll say that for me as an individual, as a person, I will always be a curator. I will always be looking into artifacts and looking fascinating into the stories. I will always be looking into my, all the fascinations, things that what makes us as us. But you, as no curator, no director, but as a museum professional, how do you feel as you are moving forward to the next phase from the museum field?
Well, I feel really actually happy and good about it. I was started out by saying, I started my career as a school teacher and I didn't really like it all that much. I really wasn't aligned for it. And I come from a family of educators and teachers, and I thought that would be a wonderful place for me to end up. But I think the thing that I'm really pleased with is I've been able to find a career that has given me a great deal of joy and let me express myself in ways that I couldn't imagine. So again, I'm very, very happy to have had, a 35-year career in the museum field and been able to contribute both to the field and to the institutions that I've been working at, helping to build them and staying really connected to a fantastic community. So I'm very, very, I'm happy to be retiring after that long of a run, but I'm also really happy about the ability and the track record that the organizations I've been involved with have had. So I'm looking forward to the next chapter. I'm not quite sure what that means, but slipping from, and again, as well as anyone just how active you have to be when you're a director. If it's not supporting a program or doing a fundraiser or hosting an event or working with staff or volunteers, it's really a 24/7 kind of an opportunity in the job, which is brilliant and great, but it really has to be something that you're passionate about, or you're not going to last long in the field. And again, it's been nice to be able to have a career that I've been passionate about and has allowed me to stay energetic and focused on the things that I truly enjoy and like. And walking away from that and retiring has been a little bit of a challenge because, we're talking about cultural identity. I think there's also just, kind of personal identity that a person starts to develop around career too. And that's been a kind of an interesting conversation that I've been having with myself. So Eric, the museum director, is going to be Eric, the retired museum director at some point, which is a little bit of a shift from the way I see myself and the way that works. But again, I'm ready for it, excited about it, and happy. I'm also happy to be able to continue to share my my experiences and my connections and contacts by doing volunteer work and helping out in the community. But really, it's kind of about shifting gears and being able to spend more time with friends and family and doing things that I've been feeling a little bit neglectful of. So again, I think being able to hand over the museum to new and younger leadership that's enthusiastic and have a little bit more energy is going to allow me to focus in on some things that I've been a little neglectful of, or at least not paying as much attention to as I could be. So I'm looking forward to the transition and for the next phase. Not sure exactly what that's going to entail, but it definitely will include some decompression time, because again, I think one of the realities is it's very hard to get time to decompress when you're in a role like this, because as soon as one fires out, it seems like we have to rush off to another one. And if we didn't enjoy it and we weren't enthusiastic about it, it would be a much more challenging position than it is. But given the fact that it's kind of cool to be able to say you're a museum director and work in cultural milieu and be able to interact with incredible people and generous people and creative people has been a real blessing.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been amazing to watch you, to witness everything that you have done. And then when it comes to, I really believe that all of us have 10 different sides of us. Work is only one of them. And I do hope that Eric, the director, maybe is retiring, but you still got the other 9 sides of you that you need to take care of and really embrace it. And then hopefully, as you mentioned, you've been neglecting some areas. Well, I do hope that allows you to feel more complete, that you cover this, now you're going to cover that, now you're going to cover that. And so congratulations for graduating from work. And now you need to take care of the other sides of you and what makes you you. We only got a few more minutes. We got 5 minutes left. Before we let you have the last thought or the last comment that you want to share, you've been recognized in many different ways internationally, and I'm not going to list all the awards. I might probably post them down below so people can read it on the description. So if you're curious, you can see that. A lot of them, I don't even know how to pronounce them, so I'm not going to be that brave to do that, but people can read it. But one thing that I do hope that people can recognize is his passion, because it is true. Is something that burns you out, something that punches you in the face and kicks you really, really hard, not once or twice, but many times in many different ways. And so I do hope that people can acknowledge your passion and how kind you are and warm you are in allowing conversations to take place. There have been many times that I feel like maybe I might dare to challenge you, but no, I don't even see it like that, because I talk to you and then you respond in a way that is easy to talk to. So thank you for that. Now that we got 5 minutes left, is anything else that you would like to say as you're reflecting as a whole, the whole thing, all the way from you as Eric, or you as the museum, or you as you already expressed that you're excited to explore the other sides of you. Anything else that you'd like to share?
No, I think, I just wanted to probably end by saying the best part about, this job that you and I share as museum directors is that we get to interact with so many incredible people. And you have been a delight to get to know, both through the For Culture Heritage Advisory Board and the fantastic work that you're doing at Highline with the museum. Your work ethic and the production of high quality programming you do is exemplary. And it's just been a joy to be able to have colleagues like yourself that have been kind of inspirational to me and kept me going, and to let me know that things are there. And especially, for those of us that worked through the COVID years, it's really nice to be able to have colleagues and friends that we could rely on and bounce ideas off of, and really solicit support from. And again, I have to say the entire museum community and cultural community here in the Seattle region has been just like you, just fantastic to work with, supportive, and a true community, which has been a delight. So thank you for being part of that community, Nancy. It's been a joy, and I keep reminding myself that I've got another 8 months before I retire, so it's not quite there yet. But thank you for the good wishes, and I look forward to staying in Seattle and in the Pacific Northwest, and continuing to be a part of the cultural fabric of the community, but just in a different role as that moves forward.
Yeah, one thing that you made a mistake though, you say that you're willing to volunteer. Don't say that, because I'm number one telling you, if one volunteer in fundraising to me, raise me money. And so that is just one example of many that will come to you. And so that's your mistake. My friends, he is not going to volunteer for everything. So you need to be cautious about how you ask him that question.
Yeah, an exhibition about the Scandinavians and Nordics of Highline coming up there.
Ooh, we're going to be doing a sport exhibit showing as skis. I think I've shown you at one point one of the skis from 1930s. And so now this is, once again, it's been a pleasure working with you throughout the years. And I think we have been collaborating all the way from OSITAC tours to even, I remember, okay, nobody knows this, but right when before we opened the museum here in Highline, I remember visiting you at your museum. I think that was the very first time I went there. And I was in a panic mode because our architect just passed away. We were right in the middle of construction. How are we going to go through this? And then you were kind enough to walk me through some of the areas and I need to watch out. Like, okay, this is to finish the construction. And so that felt so good to just have some type of insight. There's not that many museum directors in the state that can actually talk about construction at the same time and so it was a coincidence that the two of us were. And also the work. I mean, there was 3 museums that they were under construction at the same time. And so even me being able to come to you, like, how do we address this issue? It was great. Another one that you contributed was when we were moving our collections, you allow us to use your blankets, your collections blankets. So we move them. And so the collaborations that they've been with you has not been only on the blankets or advice, but also moral support. And you say it right, the COVID. I mean, 1/3 of museums in America did not survive. And we were only 6 months in when we opened the museum, when we got into this. And so it's almost like, that network support, the idea of, say, what do we do? I remember that your staff or somebody from your museum contact me. I said, I was one of the first museums that we closed because of COVID. I was like, I don't have the luxury to get my volunteers sick. And so I don't have the staff, so I had to protect them. But anyway, the time is up. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Eric. This is the first, your graduation. You're graduating from the museum field, but you are starting your professional career on Choose Eric. So thank you, my friend.
Nancy, we'll see you again. Bye-bye now.
See you soon. Bye.
Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM.
We envision ourselves sitting at a round table where no one is the leader and stories are heard respectfully, regardless of gender, age, sexual orientation, disabilities, or ethnicity. We want to embrace our differences and similarities. We are creating a place where visitors can connect with the stories and each other. Our mission is we collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people. We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices represents us all, honoring our past, celebrating our present, and uniting to cultivate our future. This project allows us to reach out to demographics who might be unable to visit the museum. People with disabilities, low-income families, people who don't trust museums, and more. In partnership, we are launching a locally programmed new radio station at the museum, featuring recorded and live Highline's heritage, history, culture, arts, and more. Are you interested in sharing your story? Email director@highlinemuseum.org.